All right. It's very exciting to be here. I think this is going to be a great panel, and this is a very, very important question to answer today. Before I answer that question, I wanted to introduce myself briefly. My name is Chris Keefer. I'm the host of the Decouple podcast and the president of Canadians for Nuclear Energy. In my spare time, I practice medicine as an emergency doctor in Toronto. It's Ontario's nuclear-powered capital in Canada. And you may be asking what a podcasting doctor is doing up here on a stage with some of the titans of the nuclear fuel cycle. And to be honest, so am I. But it seems there are some diehard Decouple fans in the UAE. And if anyone has their phone out right now, I guess you're either taking pictures or you're subscribing on YouTube or your podcast platform of choice. I will make that joke and get a few more subscribers. So I really am hoping to facilitate a fascinating conversation today about the challenges and opportunities we face in fueling the race. But first, again, I wanted to comment again on the announcement to triple nuclear energy by 2050. This is my third COP, and it is truly, or would have been truly unimaginable to think that we'd be here today. So a big shout out to ENEC and the WNA who have come together to work so hard for that outcome. And why don't we give a quick round of applause. Now, as a passionate nuclear advocate who's been on the front lines of this public relations battle, I never thought I would say that the easy part is over. We have an unprecedented amount of social and political license, but the hard work, I think, is just beginning. Our hosts here have brought a lot of hope, particularly to the West, with the on-budget and on-time completion of the Baraka nuclear plant. But we have to be honest, the West has been struggling. To put it diplomatically, struggling to deploy nuclear reactors, and I think some of these struggles extend to the nuclear fuel cycle. We are in the moment of great promise, with this pledge to triple, great opportunity, but also of some risk. I don't want to use the F word in polite company, but failure is not an option, but it is a possibility. And if it happens, we will have no one to blame but ourselves. There are three broad challenges that I'd like to address with our panelists today in regards to our pledge to increase nuclear energy, 3x by 2050. The first, how do we scale up uranium mining? The second, how do we scale up enrichment? And the third, how do we scale up HALEU and the advanced reactor fuel supply chain to deliver on the promises of advanced nuclear? In the words of today's brilliant opening speaker and the moderator of our last session, David Victor, that comment this morning really struck me. These challenges can be addressed, but not if we pretend that they don't exist. So with that in mind, let's dive in. I'm going to start by asking each of you a challenging opening question, and then I think we'll have a bit of a free-for-all. So, Tim, we'll start with yourself. If I've got my numbers straight, and remember, I'm a doctor, not an engineer, and there's a reason for that, we mined 50,000 tons of uranium in 2022. For every gigawatt that we add, we need another 150 tons of uranium, and so by my back-of-the-envelope calculations, conservatively, we're going to need to have an additional 120,000 tons of uranium being produced by 2050 if we are indeed going to triple nuclear energy by then. Can you talk a little bit about what that heroic effort would look like and what kind of actions are required by industry and government to achieve that?
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and thank you, everybody, and thanks to Sama and Mohammed. Just an outstanding conference, and this tripling is... I've been in the business for about 4 decades, and I dreamed about this time in life, and here we are. And so, for those of you that are going to keep going with it, we got a good road in front of us. And I'm a big fan of Decouple, Chris's podcast. I learned more about nuclear from that than I knew before. So, uranium. Let's talk uranium. Is there enough? Yes, there is. I think if you look at the Red Book, IAEA and NEA put out together 9 million tons of uranium out there. The problem is it's underground. It needs to be on the ground, and that's where we come in. So 50,000 ton, as you say, about the consumption today, and if we triple by 2050, then we need 150,000 ton. We can do it. You have to look at where we were. The last 10 years, after Fukushima, the last panel talked about Fukushima, we shut down the largest high-grade mine in the world, McArthur River. We put out about 18 million pounds a year, 7,500 ton a year. I mean, there was so much uranium around. The price of uranium went to $18 a pound. Nobody can mine, nobody can make money for that. We were shutting down mines. We shut down Rabbit Lake, we shut down McArthur River, we shut down Wyoming, we shut down Nebraska. So not many years ago, we were shutting down mines because we had way too much uranium. Now the talk is, we're tripling. Great, we can handle it. The good news about nuclear is that we don't sneak reactors on, normally, don't sneak reactors on. It takes us 10 years to bring a reactor on, and so we have good visibility on what the demand's gonna be and how we're gonna have to supply that. And so we will be cautious as customers that are perhaps in the crowd here come to us and say, you know what, we'd like to sign a contract for 2030 to 2040, and we have lots of those customers say we need uranium from 2030. Then we know, okay, we need to have production coming on McArthur River in Canada, maybe Cigar Lake, maybe Kazakhstan, maybe somewhere else. And so, yes, we will be there to supply the uranium. We need the assurance that we have the contracts backing us. We'll invest the money, we'll mine the uranium.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, moving on to Boris. I said these would be challenging questions, so you have to bear with me here. On the enrichment front, both Europe and the USA remain critically dependent on Russia for almost a quarter of their enrichment services needed to refuel the fleets. More than 1 in 20 American homes and businesses depend on Russian-enriched uranium to keep the lights on. I got a breaking news headline at 5 a.m. when I was up preparing for this talk this morning. The U.S. House of Representatives has scheduled an expedited vote on a bill called Prohibiting Russian Uranium Imports Act, which would bar not only the import of yellowcake, but also Russian enrichment services. Constellation Energy CEO Joseph Dominguez has said, and I quote, "The U.S. is on the verge of a crisis in conversion and enrichment." Since the trauma of the 1970s OPEC crisis, energy independence seems to be constantly in the political discourse. What will it take for Europe and America to achieve fuel independence and deliver on that real promise of nuclear energy, which is energy security?
Yeah, Chris, thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank WNA and INEC for organizing all of this. It's a fantastic event. Thank you. Now coming back to your question, it's a good question, but I must say it's not really a problem. I can sleep very well, I can tell you, because there is sufficient capacity in the market. How much dependent countries want to be from other countries, that is a political decision. We are very careful of that. That's not our cup of tea. We are in the moment in the luxury situation that due to Fukushima, we have huge overcapacity in our sector. We used them in the last years actually to produce uranium, which was not always in favor of our colleagues from the mining side, by underfeeding, so by depleting the uranium further down. And we are just simply in the moment reducing that, and by that we increasing the capacity. So the 20% share, I think, that the Russians had in the US, I would not call it as a dependency. I would say that is a minor problem in my point of view, and a solvable problem, but it's a political issue. We are prepared, as Tim already said, it's at the end the customer deciding what he wants, and it's an industry where we are normally ready before the customer is there. That is now different on this geopolitical changes, so customers want to switch from one supplier to another. It's not about a new nuclear power plant which is erected there. So, but it follows the similar principles of long-term contracts so that we have a reliable basis for our investments to keep a certain capacity alive or to actually increase our capacity to certain levels which the market needs. The good thing is we are normally, especially when it comes to new build project, much faster than the nuclear reactor, so we can actually react before the reactors are there.
What kind of timeline are we looking at? I understand, and again, I'm the medical doctor here, but the Sapporo 5, I understand there's billions of dollars of investment. I imagine because of some of the concerns I brought up, which you seem to be a little less concerned about, but it sounds like there's a lot of resources being mobilized to increase capacity, and if we are to reach our 2050 goal here, we're certainly going to be needing a lot of capacity. So tell us a little bit more about Urenco's plans.
We have a capacity program in place. We are publishing step by step the ones who have got the real final investment decision. The first project that we announced is in the US, an increase of our site there by 15%. In Germany, we made a decision for a capacity increase, and next ones will follow very soon. So we have a program there in place, and we don't publish actually numbers around them, but the capacity will grow as the demand is growing. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, challenging question number 3.
And I can tell you maybe one as
Sure.
you are a doctor, one thing to add. We have a small niche business. We are also producing stable and medical isotopes. And I can tell you there the dependency on certain suppliers in the world is much, much higher than in our uranium side. And our investments there are in the moment, compared to the existing business, much, much bigger. We are building really one plant after another to also create a certain independence. It's good not only saving the world, but also saving lives. 2 million people are treated by that, and I think it's a nice story around nuclear side story, but very important for our day-to-day lives.
It's a story I'm very familiar with up in Canada. We produce a lot of medical isotopes, obviously, in our CANDU reactors. Okay, so moving on to challenging question number 3 for Dan. On the advanced fuels front, it seems like we are in a HALEU crunch. TerraPower announced a 2-year delay in the deployment of its reactors in Wyoming due to a HALEU shortage. I understand the HALEU cascade that came online this year will produce 900 kilograms of HALEU. I'm told that this total yearly output would be sufficient to fuel a single 5-megawatt electric Westinghouse eVinci microreactor. We're, of course, hoping to deploy hundreds of eVincis, of X-Energies, Oklos, TerraPowers, and many other reactor companies' reactors over the next 27 years. Tell us about some of the challenges of HALEU and how you intend to solve those.
Sure. Thank you, Chris, for the great question. Before I start, I want to thank and acknowledge the leadership of WNA and SAMA, whose vision of tripling the nuclear fleet has now become a global consensus, and ENEC and Mohammed Al-Hamadi, whose project management and execution of the best program in the world would not sustain even a doubling, much less a tripling, so the success of Mohammed and his team are extraordinary. I'll get to HALEU. Just one thing, just to stir things up a little bit, I have a little bit less sanguine view on the LEU market than my good friend and colleague Boris. If you look at a couple of facts, these are WNA numbers. Global demand for enrichment, right, without Russia is 48 million separative work units per year. And global supply without Russia is 33 million separative work units per year. 15 million separative work units per year is 100% of U.S. demand, and add to that 10 or 11 million in Europe. U.S. relies for more than 20% on Russia, Europe 30%. So as Tim says, reactors don't sneak up on you, but neither do enrichment plants. So we do need, in our view, more supply, but also more suppliers. I just came from the other Atlantic Council session. Amos Hochstein, the president's energy advisor, says we can't afford to get into a situation where a single point of failure can be threatening to our energy security. Over half of our supply globally comes from Russia and China. So we love what Urenco does, we love what Urenco does. We need more supply, we need more suppliers, and that's why the U.S. Congress and the U.S. President are asking for a lot more money to support this. The problem extends, and I'll get to your question now, to HALEU very specifically. We can make, with this demonstration cascade, 900 kilograms per year. That's a tiny fraction of what my good friend Clay Sell, Chris Levesque, et cetera, need, and therefore we need what was called for on the last panel, a public-private partnership. These plants cost billions of dollars to invest. The United States is the only country in the world that privatized the activity of uranium enrichment because, after it all, it can be used to make nuclear weapons. So we have to be thoughtful about it. It's not going to be renationalized, but how to solve the problem requires two things. Number one, we need the kind of government investment at the scale that's now being talked about in the billions of dollars, which every other enrichment plant has benefited from with their government investments at that scale. But we also need what Boris did refer to, which is that long-term demand signal. If we have those two things, a combination of a public-private partnership, the significant government investment will encourage private capital from the sidelines. You heard it from John Wagner on the last panel. And then if you get the great success we'll see from our new reactor developers, such as Clay, I'm setting him up for his comments, then we're going to have the demand signal combined with the investment, and then the market will indeed produce the high-assay LEU that we need.
Clay, I guess two questions for you here. Do we have a chicken and an egg problem in terms of needing the HALEU in order to build the reactors, but needing to build the reactors in order to have the demand for the HALEU? Do you think that's a chicken and egg problem, or how do you approach that?
Thank you, Chris, for the question. Let me quickly add my thanks to Mohammed and Sama for this wonderful event. Yeah, I think it's fair to call it a chicken and egg problem. Boris, how long will it take you to build a HALEU cascade?
Depends from where we start.
Let's call it 4 years. And he doesn't want to build a plant until he has a firm offtake agreement for my customer Dow. My customer Dow will not make its final investment decision. They're strongly committed to the project, but they won't make their final investment decision until 2026. 2026 plus 4 years is 2030. The reactor has to be in operation before 2030, which means I need HALEU fuel before then. And so there is a timing difference. There's no technology problem here. Mm-hmm. There's no uranium supply problem. No one can spin centrifuges better than Urenco. They have the technology to do it. But there is not sufficient commercial demand for them to make the final investment decision to expand that facility. And so what the U.S. government came up with is a program called the HALEU Availability Program for the U.S. government to step in and provide that long-term offtake certainty so Centrus can make its investment, so Urenco can make its investment in enrichment. This problem is going to get solved. Even as we speak, there's a $2 billion request from the administration going through the Defense Supplemental in the Senate. I think it's very likely that that will be enacted in the near term. And so I think the program and the resources are there to crack this commercial conundrum, which will allow us to see HALEU supplies come on to support the advanced reactor developments.
Let's talk for a quick second about TRISO. LEU fuel assemblies currently used in light water reactors cost around $300 per kilogram. How do we drop the price of TRISO, which, if street rumors are to be believed, is clocking in at around $10,000 per kilogram? Street rumors, by the way.
For the manufactured price of TRISO?
Yeah.
Considering is that with the price of HALEU loaded in or not?
Say again, sorry?
You're quoting a price for HALEU?
For TRISO.
TRISO fuel, including the cost of the inputs?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, the biggest driver on the cost of HALEU is on the cost of TRISO fuel is the cost of the inputs.
Okay.
And so it's why we need a diversified and well-supplied set of HALEU enrichers to help bring the cost down. The cost of TRISO fuel is more expensive than traditional light water fuel. We ask a lot more of it. This is a fuel that cannot melt down. It's made of ceramic material and graphite that cannot melt at any temperature that it would see in the reactor life. That changes the nature of nuclear power dramatically. It allows us to have a much smaller footprint. It allows us to take our fuel temperatures to a much higher a level, and teamed with helium as a heat transfer fluid, we can produce high temperature steam. That small footprint and high temperature steam is the very basis that Dow Chemical used to choose us for an industrial decarbonization effort, as they will take carbon emissions at an ethylene plant in Calhoun County, Texas, to zero. And so TRISO fuel is more expensive, but in an overall system analysis, our fuel is more expensive, we ask more of it, but that results in much lower CapEx in terms of concrete, in terms of steel, in terms of time to build, in terms of the number of safety-related systems that have to come from a nuclear-regulated supply chain. All of those benefits from the fuel help reduce the overall system costs, and we believe our high-temperature gas-cooled reactors will be very competitive against firm, clean solutions that you have to choose from in the 2030 timeframe. And I'm not just talking about nuclear clean, firm solutions. I'm talking about any clean, firm solution. We think our XE100 reactors with TRISO fuel, with its safety case, will be exceedingly competitive. And quite frankly, we've got the customer interest to support that.
Yeah, yeah. Given that LEU is the critical feedstock for HALEU, are we putting the cart in front of the horse by focusing on HALEU at this moment?
So, as already was said by Dan, there is a chicken and egg problem to be solved for HALEU, but I'm very optimistic that we are very close to the point where this chicken and egg problem is solved, because there are three things ongoing. First, we see the US government strongly pushing for a solution with their RFP around a fuel bank approach, which I think helps to create an initial market on which investments can be taken. Secondly, we see that the UK government is also very, very strongly seeking for solutions in allowing investments into this sector. And thirdly, because customers are coming much closer to the point of ordering fuel. So we are now in negotiations with customers, and that is a different situation than 3 or 4 years ago. Historically, all of our investments have been market-based, yeah? So we normally don't need necessarily governments to step in. That's a very unique situation for us in the fuel cycle. So I still believe the more we can do on the customer side, the better it is, and all three elements together should offer us a solution in the coming years, or in the coming months, I would say. There's one element on the SMRs, RMRs, which is a little bit more difficult. We know very well how the Generation 3 reactors, how that works, how the electricity market works, so that when there is an investment decision ongoing around Sizewell, it takes then 12 years until this power plant becomes reality, and we have time enough to react on that. For the first of the kind of investments in SMRs and RMRs, I also believe we will have sufficient time, because it follows in the beginning the same principles. But when the concept of SMRs, RMRs, of mass production and much faster licensing procedures should really work out, then it follows a different business logic, and then we have to adapt to also a different decision-making way in the fuel industry. So we will then not see the projects necessarily, all of them with sufficient time before realization. We have to make up our decision then on other informations, and that is something which is new for the industry, or might be new for the industry. We don't know that yet. So that is really a challenge for the future that I see.
I might just add, I think it's important to remember the geostrategic and the geopolitical aspects of this. Tim talked about uranium prices. I remember when they were $6, I'm sure you do too. They're now over 80. And since the Ukraine war, even though there's no formal sanctions in place yet, either from Europe or the United States, enrichment prices are up from the 50s to 150. Conversion prices are from 10 to 40. And therefore, to your initial question, the United States Congress in the Inflation Reduction Act invested $700 million in HALEU, of which $500 million went for the product. The feedstock alone for the amount of HALEU that the Department of Energy wanted, 25 metric tons times 6 years, is $1.8 billion. So it becomes, just as Clay was talking about in a slightly different setting, the LEU feedstock price becomes a critical and dominant factor. A million SWU of LEU feedstock is required to make the amount of HALEU that DOE wants. So we have to, I think, really think about this thing holistically. And I do think it counsels for a continued role. That's why I welcome what happened on the stage a few minutes ago of the governments. I think it's extremely meaningful that the Sapporo 5 came in and talked about a meaningful, significant contribution, because without that kind of government ballast, I think you're going to have continued volatility, and not only the energy insecurity, but the political insecurity and the geostrategic leverage in the hands of our adversaries that we really don't wish to encourage.
Chris, maybe I'll just add to the conversation if I can on the, we always at Cameco, we're looked at, you're the uranium people, you supply the uranium, so.
I was just going to ask a question.
Well, I know, it's true, and so we see this tripling, doubling. We've been crossing our fingers for that for a long time, and so we've been setting up for that actually for the last 20, 30 years, and here it is now. And so, you know, if you go through the component parts, we've been jumping around to HALEU and LEU, and if you start at the front end, you have to explore for uranium. So we explore for uranium. We have about a billion pounds in our portfolio that is in the ground and to be mined, so we've got some supply. Conversion, we said that's been a poor cousin for the last 25 years. You never made money on conversion. Now we're tight. And so we've increased our conversion capacity. Yep, we have a facility in Port Hope, Ontario, that we're increasing the production. We're not out of the, we're not advanced like these folks on the enrichment side, but we've invested about $500 million into global laser enrichment in Wilmington, North Carolina. We think that's got hope for the future, and hopefully we'll be alongside these folks at some point. We have a deal with the DOE, Dr. Huff and folks, to re-enrich some of the depleted tails that are sitting at Portsmouth and Paducah. And then 2 weeks ago, we decided we should even go further down the line, and we put all of our chips that we had in the middle of the poker table and bought a company called Westinghouse with a partner named Brookfield. And so we're all in. We're all in nuclear. We believe in this. We believe in what Clay's doing down there, and Boris and Dan. These are all friends for a long time. We're all getting ready for it, and we'll be there. It's going to be tricky because in our business, you're either through the roof or at the bottom, it seems. And so it's hard to adjust to that. Yeah. I can tell you in the 2000s, from 2000 to 2011, we were scrambling like crazy. Somebody mentioned how many reactors were going to be built, and so we were trying to get the fuel. All of a sudden, 2011 to 2021, off the table, shutting everything down. Now here we go. Whoa, let's go again. So it's not like McDonald's where you try and grow your revenue line by 2% every year. We're either up here or down here. Now we have to get going. But I'm completely convinced and confident that we can do it.
Yeah, I'd like to just add a very quick point on that. This tripling, it's no small thing, right? And yes, we are competitors, but you know what? That's a good thing. What that means is diversity of supply. I want Urenco to succeed. I want Urenco to succeed. I hope they want us to succeed, because we need that diversified sources of HALEU and LEU to provide not just stability of supply, not just security of supply, but the price competition, so that Clay and Chris Levesque, when they go out to put fuel out to bid, they've got a number of suppliers who can step up to the plate and guarantee a robust, resilient, multiply supplied, competitively priced market.
So Tim, just back to you for a second. You kind of stole my thunder. Cameco's, I think, undergone a pretty remarkable transformation into this really vertically oriented entity, as you're mentioning, all of the different services that you now supply. Could you have imagined that 10 or 15 years ago? And also, what role do you see moving forward in terms of, you already manufacture CANDU fuel, through Westinghouse to be manufacturing LEU fuel. What does the future hold in that regard in terms of being the full package as a company?
Yeah, so, I've been around long enough. I've seen the movie. I started, my first job was in 1979, just after Dan started probably. But you'll remember that was 3 Mile Island. So whoop, here we go, and then off the cliff we went. 86 was another one. I know we hate talking about them, but they had an effect on our business. I can tell you, we went through 10 tough years in the 2010s. But then I'd say about 2 or 3 years ago, we could feel the winds of change blowing. All this talk about climate change and decarbonization, electrification, race to net zero, climate change, climate crisis, climate catastrophe. And we said, wow, this, and you could feel nuclear was getting some steam behind it again. And so we started looking and saying, how do we want to position ourselves with this? And then, that all got surpassed by energy security for a lot of different reasons. People became worried about energy security. And then, this phrase, I've heard it 5 times today, there is no net zero. I mean, there's no net zero without nuclear. And so we said, we're nuclear. We're only nuclear. What are we going to do? And so we started looking back at our mines again. We restarted some of our mines as our customers wanted uranium. We increased our production. And then Westinghouse came available, and we looked at it, and we said, it's now or never. We're going to go now or never, because a lot of our business, 80% is government-owned and government-controlled. We're not. We're on the Toronto Stock Exchange. We're on the New York Stock Exchange. That's an independent asset that came available, and we said, are we all in? And we kind of put our hands in and said, let's go, and we took that. And so, our goal is to be a full-service company with an alternate supplier to the others that are out there. I think our timing, we made that deal a year ago. It took us a year to close it. But I think the environment looks even better today than when we made the deal. And we just want to be there for our customers. We've through the uranium and conversion, I don't think there's a utility in the world that we haven't supplied uranium to at one point or another. And so this brings some added activities that we can add to our customer base. So yeah, we just want to be out there. We want to be we're proud to be nuclear. We're a pure nuclear company, and we're really proud. And today we can walk around with our heads really high because we're doing a good thing for the world. So.
Not to shine too much of a spotlight on you, but this has been such a geopolitical conversation for obvious reasons, but could you just take a very brief moment to discuss the deal with Ukraine to supply fuel to the Ukrainian fleet?
Yeah, so you obviously we're aware of what happened last year, February 24th, and we'd been working with the Ukraine a bit before. They were looking to diversify their fuel supply, I think after 2014, and so they started looking at who could fabricate fuel for VVERs. And so that was Westinghouse. So that was before us, of course. But then they came to us about 6 or 7 months ago. The Minister Helashenko and Petro Kotin, some of you will know them, and said we'd like to diversify our fuel supply, and could you supply all of it? And honestly, we had to think about it because there were some of our shareholders that said, "Are you sure you want to do that? There's a risk." And we talked about it, and we said, yeah, they have. So they have 15 reactors, 9 of them they're operating today, and 6 are the Zaporizhia that aren't operating. But we said we'll supply all your fuel for the next till 2035. That's uranium and conversion. Boris can speak about it because he's partners with us in the piece. And so you know what? Sometimes you just have to kind of do the right thing too. And so there's some risk to us, and if it goes the wrong way, then I guess that's on us, but we're very proud to be part of that. And I can tell you, where I live, in Saskatchewan, there's about 30% of the population is of Ukrainian descent, as you'll know, Dr. Keefer. And so, our employees were proud to step up, and we've helped not only with the fuel, but we've sent other supplies to help them out in their time of need. So,
Clay, I want to bring it back to you. Your company is well known, obviously, for the reactor side, but also I believe there's a TRISO X facility that's in the works at Oak Ridges. Am I getting that right?
Oak Ridge, Tennessee.
Oak Ridge, Tennessee.
USA.
Do you want to take a moment to sort of explain progress there and what the vision is?
Well, certainly our vision is to bring the XE100 reactor, pebble bed reactor, to the marketplace in a very large way. And when we designed that vision, there was not a commercial supplier of TRISO fuel because, quite frankly, there was not commercial demand for TRISO fuel. We saw an opportunity to grow a new and different part of our business. We were extraordinarily fortunate to win a major government grant from the U.S. government in 2015 to redesign how to make TRISO fuel, to do it in a way that produced higher quality, less waste streams, more efficient ways to recycle the uranium. We proved that out in a pilot facility, and so we're really proud of the role that we're playing to bring the advanced fuel manufacturing business to fruition. We are in construction on an advanced fuel facility in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. It will be the first new fuel manufacturing facility in the U.S. in approximately 40 years. We can make all types of encapsulated fuels, not just for X-energy reactors, but for any other reactor that uses encapsulated fuels. And USNC uses encapsulated fuels. Kairos uses encapsulated fuels. The Department of Defense and NASA in their space and micromobile reactors use TRISO fuel because of its robust safety characteristics. So we really see a growing market opportunity. When we seized it, we went to the department and we hired really one of their leading fuel guys, Pete Papano, to help build the TriSoX fuel company, and we're really proud of the progress that we've made. It's an important part of our business on a go-forward basis.
I guess on the topic again, getting back to the geopolitics, which are again messy. There is this legislation in front of Congress. The Europeans maybe were caught with their pants down when it came to the gas cutoff in Europe. It seems like there's nothing to preempt Mr. Putin potentially saying, I'm going to beat you to the punchline, or I'm not going to let you decide when you ban imported SWU from Russia. It seems like this could come like as quite a shock or quite suddenly. Are enrichers in the U.S. and the relationships with enrichers in Europe ready to deal with that?
Question to me.
I guess, yeah.
Once again, it's a political decision. Of course, there are discussions maybe to correct one number. When you have a nameplate capacity on an enrichment plant, in our case it's 18 million SWU, that's a nameplate capacity, but we can produce much more SWU in it when it's needed, but then we need more feed. By so-called overfeeding, but changing the operation. So we have roughly an plus minus even more than 5%. It can be up to 10%. 20% range around that point. So plus minus 5 million SWU. So that's a flexibility that we have in an existing fleet. So that's why I'm a little bit relaxed on the enrichment side. I think in this geopolitical debate, the conversion side is in the moment in the Western world the more tight area. I'm very happy that Converdyne in the US is back online and producing, and that is something where we need to prepare for. But on the enrichment side, I would say I would not worry too much. But once again, I think the industry should not have a very strong position on this. These are political decisions that are societies who need to decide what they want. As an industry leader, I can only say, well, we need guidance, political guidance. We need clarity. What do societies want from us? And that needs to be translated then in long-term contracts. So we are not an insurance there, short-term insurance for customers. We can't now double our capacity on short-term and then we have huge overcapacities. That will not work. So what actually the expectation is that we have on politics, and the US is working on that, I know, to give guidance to the market. What is the expectation of the government? What is the expectation of the society? What the industry should deliver? And I would also expect the same from other parts of the world. That is what we are needing, at least from the bigger markets. Otherwise, it will be difficult for us to make our investment decisions. But I must say, at least in certain parts of the world, I have seen also a reaction by the customers itself without any political guidance. There are customers who have decided to terminate existing contracts and to move over. We have just talked about the Ukraine for sure, but there are other ones in the Scandinavian countries who have taken similar decisions. And so our observation, at least, I can't talk about individual customers, but our observation is that customers make up their own mind what they think is right or what is wrong and what they want from us. And as long as we get these signals, we are able to react on them.
And with overfeeding, can you react quickly? Or quickly enough, do you feel?
Yeah, we can react very quickly, and I can promise you when it's needed, we are very fast, and we will send then very fast, clear signals to the markets. But I must say, we all remember very well in 2014 when we had huge overcapacities, and we should not forget that. We were all in a situation. We had a new site, a brand new site in the US. We had to impair and write it off. 1.5 or 1.4 billion impairments shortly after the investment. That's not something that you like as a business. So I would like to avoid that we come back into such a situation. So that's why we are careful. We make these decisions where we have clear indication, and we make, of course, sure all customers who want to buy fuel from us will get offers from us and will get fuel. So that is for sure. We are there, and I think we have a name of 53 years, never missed a delivery at Urenco. So that is a long history. We are we are always fulfilling what we are promising. That's where we are coming from. So that's...
In terms of the volatility of the market, this is maybe a humorous aside or not humorous, but I do hear there's a lot of centrifuges buried in the desert somewhere. But Dan, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, you offered an invitation for an American and a European perspective. American perspective, again, is a little less sanguine. These parts of the market all interact. It's like squeezing a balloon. So if you go more into overfeeding, it's going to put more pressure on conversion, which is already at $45. That goes north. And it runs through the system. We need more supply. We need more suppliers. That's why the Sapporo 5 did what they did, right? And I've said publicly many times, it takes us 42 months to build a cascade. To your original question, if Mr. Putin decides to do something like on next Wednesday instead of on a different timeline, it's going to be challenging. I'm not saying overfeeding can't do some of the work, but I think the prudent long-term policy perspective, market perspective, security perspective says we need more supply and we need more suppliers. And I think we'll be more robust and we'll be less vulnerable. It's just like natural gas. It's just like semiconductors. It's just like COVID. We learned bitter lessons when we have a non-resilient, non-diversified supply chain. People end up suffering.
So we've been talking probably a little bit too much about the present and the nasty situation of this new world order that we're in. Let's spend the last 2 minutes and 26 seconds. I'd just like to go through the panel and again, talking aspirationally about what we're trying to achieve by 2050, what each of you feels is a challenge and an opportunity moving forward. I'll start with you, Clay.
Well, I think the opportunity is to go well beyond 3x today's installed capacity for nuclear. And I think that opportunity is going to be driven by an absolute change in the nature of the electricity market in the West, and particularly in the United States. Whereas before we've looked for leadership from the utilities, in the future I think leadership is going to come from industrials and other large users like data centers, which will transform the nature of project development in the U.S. When you add the industrial piece into what is already being assumed will come from electrification, I think you're going to see a much larger increase in nuclear. And you know what? We can do it. The U.S. did it in the 70s. France did it in the 80s. We've seen patterns of dramatic expansion, multiple gigawatts coming on a year, and we're going to be called upon to do that yet again at even a greater rate. But I'm confident we can do it.
Beautiful. Go ahead, Boris.
Tripling the nuclear capacity is a huge challenge, and it's a fantastic story. I think it's an ambition which is really, really good. How realistic is it? When you look at the history of France, I would say it's realistic. When you just take the 30 years when they took their decision for nuclear in the 70s or end of the 60s, beginning of the 70s, 65 gigawatt 27 years later were installed. So when we replicate that in the Western world, it would easily lead to the tripling. So it's possible. We have already a benchmark. It's an exciting story for us as an industry. I think it needs certain things. One of the thing that I have in mind is collaboration, cooperation. Collaboration, cooperation between nations. And we see that, just as an example, the UK-US partnership on nuclear is a very strong one where things are done together. We have seen the 5 leaders here, the G7 leaders, 5 of the G7 leaders here together on the fuel cycle, signing this declaration, strong signals, but also cooperation within the industry. And Tim has mentioned as an example, after the Ukraine war, we were, Cameco, Westinghouse and us, within days able to actually offer an alternative and a solution for them. And that was for me a very strong and good example of collaboration in the industry. This whole challenge is too big that we can all try to make everything alone. We have to collaborate, we have to do things together, and we are used to that. And I believe it's a challenge, but it's achievable, and that's why it is exciting to be in this area and to support this development.
Gentlemen, we are on budget, but slightly over time. I do want to hear your perspectives, but we'll have to
I'll
do
be
it
quick.
in
I will
30 seconds
begin-
or less.
I will begin on a point of agreement with my good friend Boris on the need for collaboration, which is kind of a setup for Tim to talk about his North American solution to the front end of the fuel cycle. In terms of aspirations to support the tripling by 2050, I would like to see the world move from 4 to 5 enrichers of uranium, the 5th one being in the United States of America, which had in 1985 27 million separate work units of production capacity. I think that's a good number to shoot for.
Tim, go ahead.
Chris, I agree with everything they said, so I won't repeat that. 2 things. One, I hope in 2050 the panel doesn't look like this. It's a little bit more diverse than this going forward. We need to diversify and include a lot more people. We are going to need mountains of workers, and I hope we can diversify and really attract a lot of people. Last thing, and I know we're way out of time, can I recognize Dan Poneman? Dan Poneman has put about 4.5 decades into this business, and I think Dan's retiring soon. Is that public, or
Yes,
is it?
it's
Oh, good.
public.
So Dan's, he's been a good friend, so.
All right, everybody, that's a wrap. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, gentlemen.